Welcome to Here's the Deal. I'm your host, Shiloh Kilburn. Of course, I have my trusty co-host, Mr. Marvin. How are you, Marv?
Good. Give me half a second here, Shiloh, before we do anything substantial. I forgot to update the destination for Rumble.
Oh
So,
boy,
yep, bear with
we
me,
can't
folks.
have that now.
Yeah, well, you get to chatting, and that's what happens.
Yes, sir.
That is my bad.
How's your weather down there today?
It was gorgeous, other than windy. Jesus, sorry for that, but yeah, it was gross today.
It was nice up here, so we had sun and
I think we were rolling around 40, 45-mile-an-hour winds.
gotcha. Well, while Marvin's doing that, I'll make the announcement for Friday night's show. It's just going to be me, and I'm going to have Whitney Ehrman on, and she's going to talk about her fundraiser that she did called Funds for Fuel Cards. And basically, she's a social worker down there, and she felt the need to help some less fortunate families down there. And so she started a fundraiser, and it was called Funds for Fuel. And so she will be on with me Friday night. So
Okay, real quick, we should explain why we have the change in the show Friday night.
right. I was just gonna get to that. Go ahead, Marvin. I'll let you do that.
We had a death in the family this last weekend. Sarah's grandmother had passed away. The funeral is going to be on Thursday, and we're going to be having family in town and stuff over the weekend. So I won't be making state convention. So I won't be there as a delegate, and unfortunately, we won't be live streaming from convention all week. But family first. I got to put my family first in this situation, and I campaigned on family first. I've campaigned on faith first, and to not be here for this weekend would make me a giant hypocrite. And I need to be here. I need to be here for my wife. I need to be here for her family. So I'm sorry, folks, we won't be at the state convention. Interestingly enough, on a side note, I did call the NDGOP about it, Shiloh, and I did call my district chair. The GOP has a non-refundable policy on the convention tickets, and what I wasn't trying to get a refund. What I was reaching out to is I was asking if there was an alternate for me, if they could roll what I've already put in towards an alternate, so at least somebody's entrance would be taken care of. So I don't know if they have an alternate in place for 47 or not. I'm not sure what's going on, but yeah, we got to take care of what's going on the home front here. So, and
well,
yeah,
that's understandable. And honestly, you and I talked last weekend because as that happened with your family, my work came into play as well. So I won't be able to be there on Friday. Stuff with my work, there was different things that happened there, and I need to be here as well. So, but back to your point, Marvin, yes, you need to be there for your family, your wife, and we wish you well, and you guys are in our thoughts and prayers as you go through this time of grief and remembering her grandmother. So
yeah, it's been a rough go for a couple months now. So
yeah,
but on a lighter note, you guys will have plenty of press that's coming through as to what's going on at the convention. Love it, hate it, take it, leave it. It'll be entertaining. So if you're a delegate, please go have fun, enjoy the show. I believe Kit is still going to be up at the state convention. I don't know if she's got her credentials, but keep an eye on Grand Forks Best Source, Common Sense Uncensored. I believe Kit's going to be there.
Yep.
So you'll still be getting some live updates just from a different source. And Whitney will be a good show. I hope you have fun talking with her. I'm sorry I'm going to miss Friday night, but it'll be nice to have something lighter to offset the news coming from Fargo.
Yeah, and that's a fact. And that's something too, is we have to look for the light sometimes, and this would be a good a good thing. So somebody, a young person going out there on their own, showing an initiative to try and change their community, trying to change, be the change that they want to see in the world. So I I commend her on that. Yes, she's my niece, but I commend anybody on doing something like that. So, but without further ado, let's talk about tonight's show and tonight's guest.
Yeah. Tonight we'll have Naomi joining with us. Since the last time she was on with us, she's changed her last name on us when
Hmm.
got hitched.
Yeah,
and we have her dad on, who's Pastor Kurt Chaffee. He's the lead pastor at New Song Church. At the end of April here, they will be doing a leadership conference on the 27th. If you want to know more after we get done with the show, go check out today's guest book and archive. We have a list of who's all going to be there talking, information on how to get in touch with them. So let's get them on and have some
sure.
fun.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening.
It looks like Kurt's muted at the moment.
Oh, geez.
Well, there we go.
There you
go.
What they do to pastors nowadays.
Mute and cancel, right?
Yeah.
So how have you guys been?
Been good. Been really good. I got accepted to the UND School of Law, so that's what I'll be doing this fall. So I'm very excited for that. And I also got married, which I know you mentioned. I did change my last name, so that would do it.
Oh, you married a lawyer too, didn't you?
I did.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
that's
boy.
dangerous.
That's
I
going to be
know.
an argument I don't want to witness.
Shoot.
Oh, breaking out law books to win arguments.
Yeah.
So why don't we start by letting your dad introduce himself? I know our guests are familiar with you and what you've been doing, but Kurt, why don't you give us a little rundown about who you are and what you do and why we have you on?
Okay. Yep. You can see on the screen there. My name's Kurt Chaffee. I'm the lead pastor over at New Song Church. Been there coming up on 30 years, and married to my wife Lisa for 28 years and 5 kids. Naomi being one of them. She's the second oldest, and we have our oldest who is married to my associate pastor, and they're pregnant, so they're going to have a baby in August. So that's pretty exciting. So the first time I'll be a grandpa, and then we have a son who's a senior at Jamestown College, and another daughter who's a junior at Legacy High, and a son who is a freshman at Legacy High. I'm a chaplain for the jail and law enforcement and first responders, chaplain for the Bismarck Bobcats hockey team, the Bismarck Larks baseball team, and serve in any capacity we can in our community. We are part of the Dream Center here and working to develop any type of partnerships we can with I talked to James. I didn't get to tell you this yet, Neil, but I talked to James Lindsay this morning, and had a really good chat. He's really excited to come and be here with us on the 27th, and then also on the 28th in church Sunday morning. And so that'll stir it up. Maybe I'll get another letter written about me. Also, there's a lot of good stuff happening. We're over the target, and we're gonna keep pounding away.
Well, that sounds great. I don't know if Shiloh knows this or not, but Kurt, you actually married Sarah and I way back in 2010. And I think my favorite part of that entire ceremony was when Sarah was doing her vows. She went to put my wedding ring on. Well, I'd been stressing out all morning for multiple reasons that we didn't tell her until the end of the day. But she goes to put my ring on and won't go past my knuckle because it's swollen. And Kurt, without missing a beat on the entire thing, to having to hold and to give you her strength, and she's like ramming the finger over my knuckle. The entire crowd lost it. It was amazing. But there we were. So
that was a good day. That was a good day.
So yeah, I mean, I've known you for quite a while, and Sarah has known you for even longer. So I was a little surprised to see an article come out about you in the paper recently, and that
Yeah.
kind of was half the reason we were asked for you guys to be on, if you wanted to address any of that, but more so to talk about this leadership conference, because it's quite a list of who's you guys got coming for it.
Yeah.
We're really excited. As far as the article goes, I'm not looking to be in the paper. I'm not looking to be anything really. I'm just trying to obey God and look what's going on in the culture and address it from a biblical perspective. People say, well, Kurt, why are you being so political? And my answer is always the same. I'm not being political. If I was going to be political, I'd run for office.
Yeah.
But I'm a pastor, and I have to adhere to the scriptures. We can't change the gospel. We can't change the Bible for people's whims and for cultural craziness and ideologies. And so that has kind of stirred things up. I'm a xenophobe. I'm a homophobe. I'm a transphobe. I'm a Christian nationalist. Actually, just to clarify, I'm a global nationalist. And so, Christian nationalist, but Christian globalist, I guess would be the term.
Mhm.
And so, yeah,
So
I
that's
just
all the labels that you got from that article, or just you've heard over time? 'Cause I
over
don't think I've
time,
ever,
yeah. Oh yeah,
I've never seen any of that.
I'm a super spreader too, because we had church during the COVID, so I had people say, we're not going to church here anymore because you're going to be a super spreader. You're going to kill grandma and baby. And so we're going to go to another church that's not meeting, which I'm like, did you even hear what you just said? You're
Mhm.
leaving a church that's meeting to go to another church that's not meeting. So you're not going to go to church. It's just the hypocrisy of our culture is the blindedness of what's going on is just bizarre and confounding. And so, yeah, as far as the article goes, hey, bring it. Make more articles. I free advertising. Not that I'm looking for it, but we got a lot of things coming up. We just are in the process of booking Siaki, and I can't remember his last name, but he was in Lady Ballers with Naomi, and he was at the Capitol for 93 seconds and got arrested pretty harshly. And so he's going to be coming in June and sharing his story. And then in August, we have Adam Vera coming. Adam is the man, the father who had his son taken from him in California because of the transgender law. And so he's going to be coming. So we're just kind of pushing forward and letting the voices be heard. Riley Gaines is going to be in Fargo next Wednesday, and so I'm going to hopefully run over there and visit her. I talked to her this morning a little bit, and she's doing real well. Her and her husband, Lewis, and so I'm just
She,
trying to
she had
say, hey,
quite a
we need to
turn
give
of
these guys
events.
platforms, especially churches.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
and it all started back in December of 22 with going to the Turning Point USA event with my buddy Sean Bergstrand and Right Side Up. And Mike Lindell is a friend of mine. I just talked to him yesterday, and he's sending us a bunch of stuff for the crisis care chaplaincy program that we are doing for first responders. It's a big fundraiser, and he always is such a great sponsor. And I see on Shiloh you got the promo code there, so that's awesome.
Mhm.
But he's been a dear friend for several years, and I'm just a nobody, and so I'm just trying to obey God and step forward in what I feel like He's opening doors for me. And Naomi, of course, is a big part of that with Turning Point USA Faith, and so we're excited about.
Oh, and we
Oh,
lost him. He pushed a button.
probably.
Well, Nomi, while we wait for your dad, why don't you give us a little bit of rundown on what inspired the event and what you're going to be doing here?
Yeah,
Oh.
so as I, began to substitute teach and just look at my siblings and their friends, I was thinking like these students don't have anything from my knowledge to where they can get together and like say, oh, we share the same values, let's band together and like let's profess our faith and our values and try to help change our community. So I was thinking about that, and I was talking to all these students about like, oh, they believe that what's happening in the school system and what's happening in the country is just so disconnected from them that it's not actually affecting them. But since I've lived in Atlanta and Kansas City, and I've seen how those kinds of policies have actively ruined not only the school system, but the city and the culture, I'm like, you guys, what's happening right now in North Dakota is the beginning steps of what happened in Minneapolis, and Fargo's already way on its way there. But I'm like, we need to have something where we can get together and say, hey, we need to stand up and fight all this crap that's happening in our country and prevent it from happening in our community, which it's already happening in our community, but we can fight against it in the earlier stages than the later. So I thought of this idea and I ran it past my dad and a couple of other trusted people. And I'm like, hey, like, you know, I've been making these connections and I think it would be cool if we did something like this. And it's not just for youth, but it's for students and young adults and adults in general, because we all need to be told that let's band together because we don't want to, you know, be living in complacency. So I thought of this idea, ran it past them, and they're like, okay, great. And then I was talking to James Lindsay, and I had seen him at a couple of different conferences or whatever and talked to him and made the effort for him to remember who I was, because that's, you know, important in building those connections. So I did that, and then I started, you know, talking to like Kevin Kramer and Drew Wrigley and all of these guys that are actively fighting for their faith and values on the forefront, which a lot of people don't see what they do behind the scenes. So, you know, I mean, I know a little because I talk to them about it. But just booking speakers that are on the forefront, even like you, Martin. I mean, a lot of people don't know what you do. A lot of people don't know what my dad does. A lot of people don't know what I do. It's just like we are actively on the forefront fighting this crap. So I think it's important to, you know, tell our stories, how our faith has impacted that, and share it with students and young adults so they can feel empowered to go out and, you know, do the same thing. Whatever they're called to, you know, that doesn't have to, you know, be substitute teaching or being a pastor or, you know, going to public comments. It's just whatever they feel like.
Well, it's a pretty wide group of different religions that are going to be presented there too, because I believe Wrigley said he's Lutheran. I know a couple of the speakers are Catholic. I mean, it's pretty much across the board. You have evangelical, you have Foursquare.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like everybody's coming in just to sell one idea.
Absolutely. And that's a huge,
nice.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it too, is for me, it's so important that like we all share the same core values. If we're, you know, we're pro-life, pro-nuclear family, you know, pro all of these things that the Bible tells us to be pro. And if you're Lutheran, if you're Catholic, if you're, you know, whatever, as long as we share those same values, we can work together. We're not enemies. And I think that's, you know, what's dividing the Republican Party right now is, oh, I don't agree with you on I don't agree with you on Ukraine or on, you know, some of those other things. But at the core of who we are, our values are good, they're Christian and they're godly. And we should, even with our, you know, disagreements, we should still work together, because that's what the left is so good at doing, is working together.
Yeah, and that was something I had illustrated. What was it, last show or 2 shows ago? I had pulled up a whole Google Doc from Georgia from back in 21, where it showed what they were doing with canvassing. It showed what they were doing with ballots. I mean, I found it online when I was looking for something else and archived that as quickly as I could, because like it was a very organized step by step, and it was updated daily leading into that 21 election in Georgia.
Yeah.
So, Kurt, you ended up hosting the event, and it looks like you're speaking here too. What are you most excited about for the event? Does it look like we're going to have a good turnout, or we're just starting to build some steam on it?
Well, yeah, I think we're definitely picking up steam. I think what I'm most excited about is James Lindsay, and I think going back to what you were just talking about is, you know, in this day and age when it seems like we can't agree with everybody about everything, which, you know, I think that's pretty common. I don't even agree with myself sometimes, you know, but I think when we can find these common denominators that we can rally together and major in the majors and minor in the minor and say, okay, let's focus on things that really are important. And I think those things are really coming to the forefront when it comes to our country, you know, things like the border, Marxism, you know, are the way that the government is flushing out, and these executive orders are turning into like oligarchy, and it's just a really bizarre thing. And you know, I'm really excited about having James share, because he is an expert and very well versed in a lot of these cultural issues that we've got to get on the same page with, that aren't that hard. I mean, our founding fathers laid it out before is pretty clear, and so that's probably I get 15 minutes to share, and I'll host it. I'll do whatever I can to help support the event. But I just want everybody to hear James, because every time I've talked to him and listened to him, it's just very enlightening in things that we definitely need to address in our culture.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
his
I'm
entire
gonna-
Marxism too. It's like how it's infiltrating the schools, the government, and especially the church right now. Sorry, Marvin, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good. So I was just going to point out, as like, I haven't even started writing a speech, and I probably won't write a speech for my 15 minutes, because I know you'd reached out to me early, and I keep floating around topics and ideas, and it's going to be one of those days when I get up there, we're going to have 15 minutes of what's on my heart, and away we go.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I think you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of organic, what I would call ministry or presentations that day, that I think God's really going to surprise a lot of people, even people that are there that are atheist or agnostic. I think God's going to use it, because I think he's looking for avenues for his kids to step up, to be strong and courageous, speak truth, because the truth sets us free.
Yeah.
And I think it'll do its job, and we just have to be courageous.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, and like something Shiloh and I have talked about, and he goes, and it was when we first started setting up the show and stuff, he's like, God, I don't know. I know you say we'll talk to anybody, but he's like, sometimes I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And so, like, something that I've spoken with you about, Naomi, is how to look at things pragmatically, how you have to look at both sides of a conversation before you come to a response.
Absolutely.
Because if you just take your hard stance and you are immovable and you're unwilling to listen, you're never going to have a conversation where you can have that equal response where somebody can understand where you're from too.
Absolutely.
Because if you just come in angry and mad, you're never going to resolve anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was one of the first conversations Shiloh and I had, and I used some pretty out there examples just to prove a point. But it's one of those things, like, if you're going to have a conversation, you have to be willing to have the conversation. You just can't be angry at each other. And today's online cancel culture is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's going to be a lot of fun, I feel.
Yeah.
We've recently started coming back to New Song. I think it was about right around October, wasn't it, Kurt? We kind of travel a weird path when it comes to church in our house, and we go in cycles. And it's nothing against the church, it's nothing against the pastors, it's just kind of, we follow where our hearts lead us. And back in October, we ended up back at New Song, and I was probably not the first one to text you about that article that popped up, but it was one of those things where it's like, I don't think this guy's ever actually been to the church or watched anything, because you guys post everything online, right?
It's all available if he took the time to fact check what he said, because a lot of what he posted was just not true. So that's great journalism for you. And also, it's all available online for free, all of it. So that's what you get for putting.
We'll have to say,
your article.
In all fairness to Rob, he reached out to me several times to try to have a conversation, and every time that he tried, I was either busy, or I just honestly felt like no matter what I said, it wouldn't be given a fair shake.
Absolutely.
It would be twisted or said in a way that, and maybe that's my own bias and my understanding of some reality there. But I have, like you said, Naomi, if they want a statement from me, then just go pull it from, you can get it from, he did go on and found the commercial I made for Kevin. So I know he can do it, so there's plenty of material out there to incriminate me as a follower of Jesus and as a conservative Bible thumper.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know I mean, you look at your guys' services, on average, we average, what, an hour and a half per service to hour and 45?
Yeah.
I think after hour and 45 is when they start yelling at you from the youth rooms. But like the word of the year this year is truth. And I mean, you guys have been going through every week and breaking down Bible verses for truth. You have the whole analogy right now. We're on the section for restore. So it's not like it's just beating somebody up.
Yeah.
It's going through, it's discussing the verses. It's a very interesting way to do service. I like the fact you lead off with the spiritual gifts, and I hope that we hear some of that at this leadership conference too. Because I mean, people don't realize what's out there.
Absolutely.
Shiloh,
Yeah,
I've been
that's
asking all the questions.
I've just been taking it
so
all
just
in. So go ahead.
just to play off that, Marvin, I think a lot of disillusionment in the church in America is because churches have gotten so shallow, where there's no divine appointments, there's no divinity and supernatural expression. And not that I want to fake it or become cultish or chase after signs. Jesus talked about that. But the reality is we serve a God who's alive and created everything, and he's still active. And so, I think a lot of people look at Christianity and they go, I tried that. It was a waste of my time. I went to church, sat there was nothing for me there. And so now I'm going to go start trying witchcraft and Native American religions. And I'm going to go into this, whatever they call, I can't remember what you call it when they go into the tent, or I have friends who were checking out Judaism, which is, I'm not against any of it per se, but I just think one of the reasons that our country was thriving at the beginning of our nation was because it was really supernatural for the nation to be born and to thrive the way it did. If you've ever heard of Hillsdale College, they do some phenomenal courses on the founders and the settlers and what it really took to make that, just to get here. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Senator Kramer, interviewed him on a Sunday morning, which people get all up in arms about, but he's not a senator at church. He's just Kevin.
Yeah.
And that's what he wants it to be. But the reason I interviewed him was because he had three ancestors on the Mayflower. And so it was very interesting to see how God through time has weaved these things together. In other words, God is still supernaturally doing things. And if we portray that and help people understand this divine tapestry and story that we're in and how they are part of it, they can become alive spiritually, not just, well, I'm a believer, but there's something for me in this. I talked to James Lindsay today about that. He's agnostic. And I asked him specifically, do you feel like this is a calling, like a divine calling? And he told me a story about some friends of his that are going through similar experiences like him, and they're becoming more and more a believer that this stuff is not accidental. Like there's an orchestration here that a maestro is conducting. And so this is the stuff that we have to help people understand. Christianity isn't this dead religion. This is the very life of the Spirit of God breathing in and out of us, just as he did at the very beginning in Adam and Eve. So I hope too that people come away from this, not just with head knowledge, but also with, okay, this is a version of maybe faith and Christianity that really can impact every genre of the culture supernaturally, all the way down to the individual when I'm at home. And so, of course, that's a tall order, but with God, all things are possible.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue I have when it comes to talking with people is there's so many people that are revelations. We're in end times, and they get all panicking. And I offhandedly joke about it. I'm like, I'm not going to worry about revelation until Hollywood disappears into the sea. And everybody's like, well, what do you mean? I go, well, if you want to look at it biblically speaking, you could technically look at Hollywood as the new Tower of Babel.
It's a fact.
And they just stop and they look at me and they think about it and they're like, okay, I kind of see where you're at there. But my point is you can't worry about the end. You need to worry about today. You
Yeah.
need to take care of today. You need to take care of your friends and family today. If somebody is having a down day, you need to pick them up. You can see it. And I even see it with my work. Like if I got somebody that comes in, a guest that comes in that you can tell that they're just being beat up. I mean, you reach out, you ask them how they're doing. You actually genuinely care about the person standing in front of you.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I've read Revelation, I've studied Revelation, Kurt and I have had great conversations about Revelation. But for me, like, I can't sit and dwell on what's possibly going to come, because then you live in fear. So,
And I think a lot, not only fear, but I think we begin to live in irresponsibility where we don't really see what we actually are called to do because I'm looking, I'm looking beyond what's right in front of me. Jesus
Mhm.
himself said, "Do not worry about tomorrow because today has enough worries of its own." And when we get focused on what we're called to do today, like you just said, be a good man, be a good woman, be a good spouse, be a good parent, be a good community player. You know,
Stuart, yep.
if we can focus on, that is, there's so much value in life there. And I love end times. I mean, like, okay, we got the big eclipse coming up. We've got the CERN, gonna ramp up. We got all this stuff that's coming up. And I find it very interesting and I keep my eyeball on things. But at the end of the day, what are all of those things signs and wonders for? It's for us to point to Jesus and to this big story that we're in, that God's in control and you can know him. You can know him, and any guilt, condemnation you have can be placed under the blood of Christ, and you can be forgiven and you walk in purpose that transcends this life. So it's definitely something that I think in our current culture is coming to life. More and more people, atheists, agnostics, Christians, Buddhists, everybody's kind of having an awakening. And it's really exciting because we know in the end we win. So we got nothing to worry about.
We do to a point, but we still have to do the work. And
yeah.
I think that's where people
100.
go. I think that's where people go wrong is with modern day Christianity. They're taught they need to be at a place at the end of the week and for so long, but the rest of the week we just don't do anything. And that's, I think, where a lot of people go wrong is that faith without the work there's nothing.
Dead. Yeah,
Yep.
and that's what I mean by irresponsibility. I
Hmm.
think we start to exchange our responsibility for irresponsibility because our culture is so hypersensitive, and we're just, everything is just hyper emotional. We've got everything at our fingertips. And
Hmm.
so we can feel like we're doing things, and Jesus called it being a busybody, and we're actually doing the primary thing that's right in front of us that God has asked us to do, which is a very common of people who are immature and irresponsible, right? I should go do this responsible thing, but I'm going to skip that so I can do something that makes me feel good.
Well, and the last time we had Naomi on, we kind of touched on the whole separation of church and state stuff. I know you were working on your constitutional study for that. How's that been going?
It's been good. So I mean, Wade and I do a little podcast whenever we have time, and we went over Virginia. The more that I look at the, primary documents, the more that I actually realize how important Christianity was to the founding. And people can say like, oh yeah, some of the founding fathers were deists, and that's true. But even the deists agreed on, nature's creator and understood that life, liberty, and property was granted by someone, by something, and that something didn't just give us freedom, it gave us freedom that we have to choose to use to pursue moral righteous things. Otherwise it's like I could just go and kill someone. No, you don't have freedom to have freedom. You have freedom to be able to pursue righteous things. So I mean, even looking at like the first like state constitution and this first state bill of rights, like Virginia, I mean, at the bottom, I think it was section 16 talks about that all people should practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity. And, the part of the people that wrote that were deists, but they understood that these Christian principles that we had did not mean that we had to force people to be Christian, because even in that, in the same documents for Virginia, it said we should not force people to be Christian because that's just going to lead towards resentment. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't practice those values, because those are good moral values, and that's what our nation should be founded upon. And that, at the end of the day, that's liberty, not freedom. And they're two different things that a lot of people, I just think, don't understand the difference between. So
I'd take 100 of those deists today, because they were much more devout
and
than
moral.
a lot of people today. Yeah. And when I say devout, I don't mean sitting in a chair for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm talking about their faith day to day. And they really did, as Shiloh, you're talking about. It wasn't just a faith that they didn't exercise. It was really practiced. Even if they weren't sure on all of the beliefs, they really did have a moral compass that was very, very important to the, not just themselves and their families, but to the community, for the survival of our nation.
Well, you all know what's funny about that is, but when people were first like coming to the United States and they were thinking about who they're going to let be citizens, they didn't let anyone be a citizen. It was interesting, because even if you were born here, you weren't granted citizenship. You had to be vetted by people within the community and have the same moral like principles, values. And if you look at Federalist 2, John Jay has this entire quote of what a country should be like. And a lot of it had to do with having the same values. And if I think he specifically said too, if you practiced something or a religion that was harmful to the community, then you don't have the right to practice it. Like it's not freedom that they were talking about. It's using that to be moral.
Mm-hmm.
So coming into the conference here, I mean, we got Drew Wrigley, Ricardo Pierre Lewis, we got Josh Gallion, we've got Representative Mike Machenbacher, Senator Kevin Kramer is going to be speaking. We have Sandy Sanford that's going to be here, Brandon Pritchard, Matt Heilman, Greg Carr, and of course you guys roped me into doing it, so I'll be there. And then
I'm sure that was hard to do.
Actually, I made her work for it a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Just like I made you work for it a little bit.
We may have some surprises up our sleeve for everybody too. So just,
oh boy.
I'm working on some stuff, Naomi, you don't even know about right now. So there might be some surprises.
No, and overall, like the takeaway that I've had on the conversation with this conference is it's not about religion. It's about why you should be a leader, why you should move forward, what you need to, why you should be involved, which is really neat.
Yeah.
What I miss is, I don't even know if they do it anymore. They used to do student congress. They used to do, Shiloh, you push the button. They used to do like student congress. There used to be speech and debate. I know you were substitute teaching. Like, is that even a thing anymore?
So it is in some places. A lot of it's not. And the people that run those groups are more liberal. So it goes back to, I think the problem with the school system when it comes to the founding is that they don't actually teach the founding. They teach bits and parts of it, and they say that separation of church and state. They don't actually understand the primary documents. Actually, it's funny. I was talking to freshman year of high school. I took my U.S. history course, and I'm friends with my teacher now because that was a while ago. And I Facebook messaged him. I'm like, hey, what do you think about separation of church and state? And he's like, I mean, I don't really know much about it. I'm like, you literally taught us it when I was a freshman. He's like, yeah, well, I never read the primary documents. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because what happens is the federal government give these people a standard to which they have to meet, to which the state fleshes out more. But if you look through all of that course outlines for what these teachers actually have to teach, it's way too much for such a short period of time. I think you learn about U.S. history, I think, in 8th grade, and then you take another, like, I don't know if it's a world history course, but it involves the United States a little bit. And then you have like a civics and politics course later on in high school that's a semester long. So it's not even a full year. So I'm not surprised that students are coming out of the school system as communists because they don't know any better. And even when it comes to like the student government and all those kind of stuff, they're so scared, at least on the college level, they're so scared to be involved in politics because they don't want to piss anyone off. Like for the leadership conference, I emailed like every single college in North Dakota to the groups that were applicable. I'm not even kidding you. I sent them all mail. So, and I got so many responses saying, especially with like the civics group saying, oh, we're nonpartisan, we don't want to be involved in this, we can't promote this. And I'm like, you guys, TPUSA Faith is we're a nonprofit, we can't be partisan. So I had to explain that to so many people, and I'm like, they're like, well, there's a bunch of Republican speakers, and I'm like, okay, they happen to be Republican. I chose speakers that were like pro-life, that are pro-nuclear family, that were pro-border. Like, these aren't things that are inherent to the Republican Party. These are things that we should all, as humans, hold as a standard. And it just happened to be that the speakers, a lot of them were Republican. I asked people that I respected on the left to, even some of the people on the left are pro-life. And I asked those kinds of people and businesses to be involved, and they all sent me angry emails saying, especially churches, are like, what you're doing, Jesus would never teach. And I'm just like, you're a pastor. How can you not tell me that the Bible's pro-life? Like, did you read like Genesis? Like, so it's not a partisan event. And I had an instance where I've had a couple instances where I've had businesses or organizations tell me that they were in support of this, and then later on they had someone go tell them like, hey, this is a political event, and they called me and they said, hey, we can't support this anymore because it's political. I'm like, this is not political. We're not talking about the Republican platform. We're talking about leadership and how we should all be leaders in our community. This event is open to anyone of any religion on any part of the political spectrum, because at the end of the day, I would appreciate a Democrat knocking on my door to campaign the Republican that's sitting at home. We should all be civically engaged if we truly care about our country.
Well, you keep it up, you guys are going to get 15 minutes of Acts 18, 9, 10 when I do my thing. Oh, it's the reason I'm involved in the first place. So anyway.
So do you think that if it wasn't held at your church, that it would be a different story?
No, absolutely no.
No, it's
no.
because of the speakers.
Yes, I mean,
and Becker sponsored it, so that's
Yeah.
another darling there.
Yeah, Rick Becker is awesome. I have to tell people though, because we're a nonprofit, this is not an endorsement. Like, I opened this conference for people to sponsor to like other people that are like campaigning right now. I just want people to have a platform to people that they want to speak to. Like, it's not saying that, you should go vote for this guy. Like, that should be left up to the individual. I'm not gonna go tell them to force them to vote for whoever.
See, this is the problem that I've had with modern day church for a long time. I was raised Catholic, and I'm born again now. It was September 11th was my 1-year anniversary, and anyway, to your point, see, I don't think a lot of these people even know what Jesus wants anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they've lost track. It's all about preaching to the billfold and keeping the pews full, and it's not spirit-led anymore. It's not about faith. It's about trying to keep the doors open.
Yep.
To put it politely.
And Shiloh, I tell you what, it's really an interesting study to look at the first century and the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, and the Romans, and how they were all in league together. Because even though Sadducees, Pharisees really didn't like each other, Herodians really didn't like them either, because the Herodians were kind of fake Jews, even though they were Jews, but they were all of these guys were looking to be in power with the Romans. And so they were very careful to not do anything to upset the Romans. And here comes Jesus. That's all he did, was not only upset the Romans, but upset the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. And so you've got this going to exactly what you're saying, Shiloh, is we have got our founders were adamant. They did not want this to happen, where the church would become a state church. And that's really what it's become, is everybody is really, well, you can't say that because the government says. You can't say this because the government says. Our founding fathers would have said, no, that's why you say it. We have got, the church is the moral compass of the country. And if we don't speak what the truth is, who's going to create the truth? We know, and it ain't going to be
Madison said
God.
that.
It's going to be the devil.
Well, and you look at it, I mean, how many of the original founding fathers were fleeing England because of the Church of England?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. The thing that's interesting right now is people don't understand when it's separation of church and state. It's not saying that the church can't influence the government. It's saying that the government cannot give power to churches to influence the political structure. Like there's so many things, like pastors were or certain churches were given tax breaks, certain churches were given certain voting powers. Other Christian denominations were, didn't have favor within the government and treated differently than the established church of the state or of the colony at the time. So nowhere has it ever been that the church cannot influence the government. Has always been the other way around. But what's happening right now in our country, it's a reverse of it, where we're trying to create a state church, but it's not the actual church. It's like a weird communist controlled thing by the federal government to get people to comply, because they see that church is very influential and powerful. And what's happening again
That's what I mean. That's what I mean by in the first century. That's what but that's what happens every time when the church loses its course.
Absolutely.
It becomes an agent of something that's not God. And it's my biggest concern for the church in America is we have got it's what's really interesting is to watch here lately, watching some of these mega pastors are finally finding their backbone.
Yeah.
And they're finally, especially after last Sunday with the whole trans awareness day, that was kind of a cross. And even though that's been going on for years, it was something this year that was different, that people are, I think there's these lines that are being crossed. And we, as Christians, we're very patient, right? God is patient with us, so we're patient with others. But at some point, our patience isn't patience anymore. It's irresponsibility and it's laziness. And it's really cowardice to say, well, courage is now cowardice, which is just, we have to get these priorities straight.
Yeah.
Well, and like a counter argument to the separation of church and state, and this is one that I've had multiple times. So you have your three different branches, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have your lawmakers who write the laws. You have your executive branch, the governor, the sheriff's departments, the execution of said laws. And then you have your judicial system, whose job is to interpret the laws. So if you want to throw down your hat and go up in flames on separation of church and state and how the church shouldn't be involved in these decisions, then I don't think we should be electing lawyers and judges to be lawmakers.
100%.
But we'll just hang that one out there, because you look at our legislative assembly, I think was it a tenth of the legislative assembly is or were attorneys over the last couple decades, if not a little bit more.
I think a problem about it, though, is because my husband is an attorney and I want to be an attorney. I think a lot of the time what is happening is because there's such a specific language that attorneys use that the general population just does not understand. I think a bigger problem than just saying attorneys shouldn't be those things is attorneys are incredibly smart. They went through law school, they took the LSAT, they had to pass the bar, they had to do all these things. I think if they made the language more acceptable to the general public, I think that would be more beneficial, because if the general public understands what's happening, they can have more in a say. But if you look at the Century Code right now and look how a ton of things are written, it's very confusing. And if you don't understand that language, you're going to have no idea what's happening.
Well, and the power of the word is everything when it comes to Century Code. But that's where you do see some of these laws getting passed that were drafted by attorneys that get a little dicey. May and shall. People don't even realize how big of a hang-up that is.
Absolutely.
I mean, one word in a line of Century Code completely changes the context of it.
Absolutely.
But back to where I was at, though, I mean, people say that the church shouldn't be involved in politics. They shouldn't be involved, but at the same point, it kind of feels like you're violating the separation of powers when you have an attorney that's a lawmaker.
Well, I don't think inherently being an attorney.
Speaker gets it. And not attacking attorneys. I'm not.
No, I know. I don't think I think it depends on where you practice and what you practice, because I think the judicial, at the end of the day, the people that are interpreting the law are the judges and the juries.
Yep.
The attorneys are just the ones making the arguments. And even if the prosecutor makes an incredible argument, the jury could still, for some reason, vote something a certain way. And that's not because the attorney did a bad job. The attorney could have done amazing. Everyone in that courtroom besides the jury could have thought that, whoever is proven guilty. But at the end of the day, it's the judges that are the ones that are interpreting what is being said, because they are the ones that gives the sentences, unless it's like a bench trial. So I would be more concerned about judges and the jury, because the attorneys aren't the ones that actually, they can interpret the law to make an argument, but they can't interpret the law that goes to like the final sentencing, because that's not up to them.
I think too.
Well, yes and no, because it just happened not too long ago with Luke, when the state's attorney sat there and told the judge what he was supposed to do after he gave him a year of unsupervised probation, and then the judge wasn't gonna make Luke give up his gun rights, and the state's attorney flat said he had to because it was part of the probation.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's let Kurt get his thought in here first.
Oh, sure.
What were you going to say, Kurt?
I mean, well, I just think, when you think about what I would consider government overreach in every area of our culture, like you can't even cut somebody's hair legally without having 120 hours of this. And like, even like for a lawyer to have to pass the bar and 3 years of school is bizarre to me. It's like, if somebody can argue the law well, why do they have to pass the bar? Why? I mean, there's all these rules and regulations, and it's all about so they can control. And that was, the founders were not into that. They wanted freedom, liberty that was ended in morality and ended in healthy ways for the culture and for America to be strong. And so I just am really, with all of the different red tape that you have to go through anymore to do anything, it's just ridiculous, and it's just killing our country. And of course, I can say that, but what do you do about it?
Well,
same with childcare. Oh, we just went through it with our daycare. I mean, it takes up to 6 months to get a background check done for someone to work in a daycare, and they have to wait now because they made the rules to where if they don't have the background check done and cleared, they can't work at a daycare. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, before they could at least be supervised. So who's going to wait up to 6 months to get a job like that? And the other thing is correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the bar isn't even a part of our country. It's got to do with Great Britain and Europe, isn't it?
Great Britain. Yes.
So then
yes.
why do these people, why are they taking the oath to the bar? Why does the bar have anything to do with our country?
Well, the thing about the bar is it's associated with the association they have to be a part of to be a practicing attorney. You don't have to go to law school in every single state to take the bar and to pass the bar and to be a practicing attorney. But there's something to be said about working hard and studying specifically for a test that goes over a ton of laws and how to think like an attorney and how to argue to be a successful attorney. I don't think people should just willy-nilly can be an attorney without having some sort of standard. It's like, I wouldn't trust a doctor that hasn't gone through med school. I would say it's a little bit different with being an attorney, but I mean, I would say a similar standard should be applied, even though it's a different kind of, thinking and arguing. And you have to remember too, with all of these people, they're looking at, crime statistics. They're looking at statistics of how judges rule on certain, on certain crimes and how that has worked for certain people and how that has not worked for certain people and how the population is affecting it. They're looking at all of this kind of stuff behind the scenes that we just do not see. I would say the problem that we are facing, at least with crime, at least in North Dakota, is not the attorneys, because an attorney can suggest a harsh sentence and a prosecutor will, more likely than not suggest a harsher sentence because they are representing the state. what will happen is, even if they suggest something harsh, the judge can say, even if the attorney is telling the judge, you should do this, the judge does not have to listen. They can judge more lenient, they can judge harsher. It all depends on that specific person, their criminal history, because you can't, you break a law and there is a range in which you are in the sentence that you're given. But that doesn't mean you will for sure give that sentence, because your entire history of crime is going to be taken into account to what you're being given. And some judges are going to rule harsher than others. And I think there should be a standard for which judges should have to rule within a certain range, and it shouldn't, change based on how they're feeling a certain day. I think that would be more beneficial than, saying that, oh, you should not let, or you should let people become attorneys without a standard, because the standard exists and it's important. And I would not want 90% of the people that I know to be an attorney. And especially with online school right now, you don't have the rigor you have from being in person, having those full in 3 years, the hard tests, all of those prepare you for being a literal, practicing attorney, because it's hard, it's not easy. And again, I still think there should be some sort of standard, whether that's the bar, whether that's something else that we create, that the United States says, hey, I think this should be across all 50 states. And even so, I mean, it's different per state. There's not federal regulations when it comes to this specific rules and procedures to become an attorney. It's all different.
So,
and I think that was the intention of the bar, but unfortunately, I think we all know we got a lot of bad judges and we got a lot of bad attorneys, and we don't. And this is, our founding fathers would turn in their, if they were to pop into the planet, they'd be like, why are these people leaving? I mean, think about the people that are in Congress right now.
Yeah.
It's like some of the people that are in Congress, it's like they would be like, there's no way. You can't let these people be in Congress, let alone let people vote that don't have citizenship. So there's all.
Oh.
Well, with all due respect, I think there is a lot of bad judges and attorneys. I mean,
Absolutely.
Some of these attorneys, they don't have the guts to stand up for what's right. And what do I mean by that? Just look at the little town of what was it? The
Benedict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't find anybody. How many of these places where people need help and it's going up against our own city government or state government, and they don't have the guts to do it because they're for whatever reason?
Well, I think
conflict of interest is how they get out of it.
So there's a lot of things. I mean, those situations exist. I personally think there should be some sort of moral standard you need to have to be in any position of power, because I think that's important. But also, when thinking about why things get solved, why things don't, why things go to trial, and why things don't, there's, again, a lot of things that if you are not in that field, or if you don't look into that field, you're not going to understand. A lot of it comes down to finances. Some of it's going to be the politics, obviously, and I think that's bad. But I don't think that the solution is cutting off the head of the beast, so to say. I think it's better if you go in and look at what's causing these people to become bad, whether that's politics, whether that's being paid off, whatever that may be. Being an attorney is a powerful position, and you can help so many people in that position. But I don't believe the solution is saying, you're the position that you're in is worthless, because I mean, Alexander Hamilton went to law school. I mean, a lot of the founding fathers also went to law school, and they valued, the education that they had, because a lot of the citizens of the colonies at the time didn't have that education. I mean, there's a reason that there were certain people within, the Congress at the time that were voting, that were delegates, and all those certain things. A lot of them weren't just people that didn't have an education. A lot of them were knowledgeable people that had gone through all of the processes, even if some part of that was in England. And I think what they tried to do is take the good parts from that, bring it to, the United States. And what ended up happening is the same thing that affected England is now happening to us. It's the politics, it's the power, it's the greed. And I personally think that there should be some sort of moral standard that people need to, again, like I said, they need to have in order to be in any position of power. Because positions of power are good, but if you have someone in there that's immoral, it's not going to work. But if you make all of the positions not powerful, if you have bad people in there, it's going to do the same thing.
Well, and that leads me right back to where we started here, though. There's your argument for separation on church and state just by bringing up an attorney.
I don't see what you mean.
So
Maybe for me.
so the initial question that I asked is, church shouldn't be, politics shouldn't be involved in, or church shouldn't be involved in politics, right? So the counter argument that I brought up was attorneys shouldn't be lawmakers. And so taking that conversation, that argument, what you just said, you can literally reapply that to pastors speaking regarding political things. So it's not that the pastors are bad because they're talking politics, because Lord knows Jesus was flipping tables in the temple. So the argument that you just gave back of having a moral position, having a moral standing as an attorney, they should be in good standing, like that reapplies to why pastors or why people should be able to speak out about things that are going on.
And that's in any position. I think in any position you should have some moral compass. I mean, unless people think we should have like a subjectivistic country, which we all know where that leads. So
well, and really what I've compared to, originally I used to compare what was going on in America to the first Roman Empire. On average, a standard empire lasts 250 years. Historically speaking, for a couple thousand years. So unless you cut out China, they break all the rules. So originally I used to do the first Roman Empire, but really what I start seeing more and more with what's coming out, what's in the news, what's in the media, what the movies are, what the content is that's being exposed to earlier and earlier children. We're talking more Nero's reign and Caligula's reign than we are talking the first Roman Empire. And we see that corruption seeping everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, kind of was our founding fathers' point. Like, if we lose our moral compass, there's no police force big enough to control the people.
Absolutely.
And, that's why our creator, right? We're supposed to all be personally, individually responsible to be good citizens, to do the 10 Commandments, basically.
Yeah.
And now we've got people who don't even believe in God, or, I saw that legislator last week or whatever it was that said, yeah, those crazy MAGA people think that our rights are given to us by God. It's like, well, yeah, that's what our Constitution says. It's like, and she's a legislator. It's like, oh my goodness, what in the world? So, we need revival.
See, these knuckleheads, that's what they think, is because it's just, and they don't even realize that our government came from the Bible, started with Moses. They don't even realize that.
Yeah.
The first 300 years of Christianity to what it has become now, it's a dumpster fire, and some of these people the majority of them don't understand that.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're too busy worried about their salvation and not what they're doing on earth right now and doing the work, because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's good.
Naomi.
Yes.
What we need to do next, we need to do some conversational classes when it comes to this stuff.
Absolutely. Actually, I got,
because I think you and I could sit and have some very good arguments to teach people how to argue pragmatically.
So I was substitute teaching a couple days ago, and I was in a class with a teacher who was not a para, but she was support staff, but had a teaching license, but could leave class early because it was like it wasn't like the normal kids class. It was like these kids were like needed help or whatever, but a lot of them were just like immature boys that just are high schoolers. So I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but anyways, so I was talking to them, and I like talking with students, getting to know them, and we somehow the topic of LGBTQ+ was brought up, and they're like, what do you think about it? And I was just like I didn't say, that's all I did, because I wasn't gonna get into it with the boys. And they're like, yeah, I agree, I just don't agree with what they're saying. And the support staff stands up and says that what they're saying is hate speech. So then she goes over to the phone and she calls like the office and says, I need to send boys down to the office. And I tell her, I don't think that's necessary. She looked at me and like scoffed at me and said, now I'm getting attitude from the sub. And she came in and sat back down, and I started asking her all these questions. Like, I asked her about her credentials. I asked her her position in the school. I asked her like all of these questions to help me understand her position, because I told her, as a substitute, like, you leave early, I'm here the entire class period. I know when it's to send people down to the office, and these boys are not doing anything bad. So we got into it. And guess what? She started calling me immature and that I need to grow up. And then she encouraged other students to say that to me. And I'm like, I told her, I'm like, I'm staff. Like, we are both staff. We are both adults. I don't understand why you're calling me these things. So what ended up happening is I ended up leaving the classroom, and I was like, have a good day. And they just didn't answer me, obviously. And I was pressing her. I was like, why do you think like what they're doing is bad? And she just never gave me an answer. Cause I'm like, what they're saying is not hate speech. Like it's not. So then after I went to the principal's office and I talked with the vice principal, and I sort of explained my situation. And he's like, well, you don't know the history of these boys. And I'm like, I don't need to know the history of these boys, because if you look at how, courts rule things, they rule if someone's guilty or not based on the situation. They don't base it off of their prior history. That's when sentencing comes in. So I'm like, why are you expecting me to know all of this and to, say you need to go down the office because you said you didn't agree with the LGBTQ plus stuff? And, obviously he didn't like that answer. So I think he talked to the teacher maybe today, but I still don't know if I'm on the line for my job now, because I stuck up for, boys that always get sent to the office because their parents are on speed dial and they're too loud. I'm like, these are high school boys. They weren't being disrespectful. Maybe they're being a little loud, but everyone was getting their work done. So I just think people are just looking for a reason to send young students who are just loud to the office that say that, they're homophobes.
And we wonder why we can't read and write, and we have the scores that we have, and
I know
the issues that we do in our school.
They're sending them down to I'm like, what is sending them down to the office to where you have their parents on speed dial doing for them? When I was in the classroom, they were the first group to get their work done, and then they were talking and hanging out while everyone else was finishing their work. I'm like,
yeah.
So, and I'm substitute teaching like at least like 20 times a month. So it's not like I'm just like some new sub that's like doesn't know how it works. I mean, I'm still relatively new, but like, I just think what's happening in our school system right now is producing communists or people that resent, any type of moral behavior, because they're taught that it's wrong to say, I'm anti-LGBTQ plus, or I don't agree with them.
Nobody's held accountable, including the parents. And just like you said, the parents are on speed dial, but what has that done? Honestly, what has it done? If they're on speed dial, and I mean, obviously the parents, it's just going in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
So,
well, we got all sorts of fire tonight, and we haven't even talked about the conference. I'm sorry, Naomi.
Oh, no, it's all, I mean, this is the kind of stuff we'll be talking about at the conference. I mean, I'm sure people watching can understand how fired up we are about this kind of stuff. And I hope it's exposing stuff to them that they, again, people don't know behind the scenes stuff for, what the public education system looks like, or like behind the doors of being a pastor. Like, I just hope that people are encouraged by this and are like, oh, I want to learn more. How can I actively work in my community to help stop doing this kind of stuff? Because a lot of the stuff that people are fighting has to be behind closed doors.
Well, and like tonight I was supposed to get down for the city commission meeting, and unfortunately I didn't make it because they were going over this 10% evaluation on property increase.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple more rounds of that coming on, so I'll plead my case down the road. But realistically speaking, it comes back down to showing up.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you want to be involved, if you don't know how to do this stuff, if you want to network and meet people that have stepped out of their lane to do what they do, I mean, you can't tell me at 20, Kevin Kramer knew he wanted to be a senator in North Dakota. You can't tell me at 20, Naomi knew she was going to be heading up TPUSA Faith in North Dakota. Like, there's an old Boz Lerman song from 90s. It was horrible 90s. It was called the Speech Song, I believe. And
Hey, 90s had some of the best music now. Come on.
one of the lines that came up in is he's like, some of the most interesting 20-year-olds don't know what they're doing with their lives. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't know what they're doing with their lives. I mean, you're never too old to quit. You're never too old to try.
Yeah.
And I thought that was what was really neat about this conference and what you were bringing forward. It wasn't just for young adults.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for anybody to be involved, to learn, to look for inspiration. And it's from all walks of lives. It's because you have pastors speaking, you have attorneys speaking, you have normal people like me speaking. Like, I know it doesn't seem like it, but honestly speaking, before I got involved, folks, I was a fan of work, sleep, and repeat. I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd spend time with my wife, my daughter. I'd sit and play video games because I get up early just so that I could decompress before I went in, and you repeat every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, it's not because I was trained as an attorney, or it's not because I was trained to do something. I got involved because it became a necessary thing for me to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people like Shiloh keep keeping me involved, so I guess I'm going to keep doing it. How about?
You know, speaking
Yeah.
about the conference, and just in general, but especially the conference, is it seems that courage begets courage. And so I'm hoping that people will walk away from that with, you know, their spine straightened up and being able to stand up and say and articulate maybe better from some of the speakers, that they'll be able to communicate maybe clearer, especially with James, that
Yeah.
they'll be able to say, you know, this is what Marxism is, or this is why we don't agree with these ideologies. It's not because we hate anybody.
Yeah.
It's just that a boy can't be a girl. I mean, you can't change that. And so, yeah, it's something that I'm hoping that if at least there's a good injection of courage that happens that weekend, and people walk away from that with a little bit, you know, their shoulders back and saying, okay, let's go. We can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so I do safety for a living right now, and I'm in charge of different divisions of our company as far as safety goes, or at least I cover them. I'm not really in charge. I'm just their coordinator for safety, and you know, having to talk with some of them guys and different things, you would be surprised at how many of them, you know, we're talking about a revolution and people finding Jesus. And I mean, some of these guys, they're pretty, you know, they're rude, crude, oil field workers, and I love every one of them. And it's you know, as they've gotten to know me and know kind of where I stand, you would be surprised at how many of those guys want to talk about Jesus or the Bible or what they've been through. And to me, that's one thing that I've learned in my journey here since becoming born again is you know, talking to people, whether it be comfortable or not, because some of those conversations aren't very comfortable, especially, you know, when people walk up to you. And I'm not saying this about my coworkers, but other people that I've run across since this has happened is they'll tell you that they're atheist or whatever the case may be, and they want to know why I feel the way I do. And I find that most people, we can have that conversation, and even though we don't agree, we can agree to disagree. And you know what? Most of the time, 90% of the time, there ends up being multiple conversations after that first conversation because, you know, we'll both go and think about it and stuff. And, you know, I already know where I'm sitting and who I'm sticking with. But, you know, those guys will come up or people that I've come across. I mean, even in our different vendors and different companies that I go to, different sites and stuff. I mean, it usually the conversation turns to that. And that's been really neat. And I think that's part of, you know, kind of what you're trying to do here, correct me if I'm wrong, is to help people have that assurance to, you know, going out and talking to people, even if it's not comfortable, getting out behind, you know, out of your comfort zone. Because that's what he wants us to do. I mean, we can all sit in a group that alls agree and it's all sunshine and rainbows, right? But let's go out and talk to some people that don't agree with us and see how that goes.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
believe that it matters.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of times people feel like, well, I tried that and there was no fruit. And it's like, well, you don't go
Mhm.
plant a kernel of corn and then tomorrow have a corn stalk. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a process to it, and patience and persistence, and I think that's absolutely right, is to create a good soil so that seeds can be planted, we can water them, and then harvest someday. And that's discipleship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You bet.
Well, I think we ran a little longer than I promised you guys. Do you have closing thoughts here before we let you get back to your evening?
I mean, I'm just very excited for this conference, and I just hope that, God brings the people there that need to hear this kind of stuff. And whether it's
Mhm.
300 or 3,000, I mean, ears that will hear will take it and help make changes
Yep.
in our community. And, it starts at one person. So if one person hears what we have to say and, goes out and tries to influence and make positive change, then I would consider the conference a success.
I have one last question on the conference. If
Yeah.
somebody can't make it, is it going to be available after the fact?
Yeah, so we are partnered with Beck TV. They're going to be doing like 5 people. I might just maybe we can have like Travis record it just so we can have it on file if anyone, is requesting to watch all of it. And I really am hoping that, if God wants us to do this, make this an annual thing, it will be. I mean, I've already had people ask me about next year. Just, just all of the kinds of questions. So, we'll see, what happens in the future. But I think for this year, it will be one way or another, either through Beck TV or through, asking for new song for the archive of it or whatever. It will be available for people to see.
Good
And it's
deal.
probably on YouTube.
Yeah.
Probably on YouTube. Perfect. So, well, in tonight's show, I mean, we have this out. It's on our YouTube. It's on
Yeah.
our Rumble.
Mhm.
It's on our new YouTube, folks. We're not using the old channel, so please go through the website, follow the right YouTube. We haven't
Sure.
posted the other one since September.
Yep.
We're out on Twitch. I mean, we have you guys out there, so it's all live streaming right now.
Mhm.
And that's the thing, is like, when it comes to it, you have to have the information available. And
Absolutely.
and agree to disagree. I think this is going to be a really good conference. I think that we're going to have some really good conversations. I fully expect people to want to talk to me, whether they agree with me or not. I'm not there to pick a fight. I just want to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So I save my fighting for council meetings.
Yeah, that's a fact. So,
Yeah.
well, I really appreciate your guys' time on tonight, and we're gonna have to do this again. I really enjoy having Naomi. You've been on it. What is this? Your second time now?
Third, because she was in Devil's Lake with us.
Oh,
boss.
that's right.
True.
Third.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. So I do appreciate you guys being on, and I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having us on. And my biggest, I think, my last thing would be, God is in control, and we can trust him. We have nothing to fear. We don't need to be afraid or intimidated. We can speak the truth in love with a genuine heart, and God will bring fruit from it.
Yeah.
We just have to be willing to step out, say it, and then be present in the trench with people.
Yeah.
And because what happens in my 30 years of pastoring, 30 years plus, is when you're in the trench with people, even though they may stab you in the back, they may run away, they may do whatever, but it all comes back. And so I just have to outlast them. And we have nothing, we have nowhere to run, right? We're already in the bosom of God. We have all we need in our Savior. And so we have everything to gain, but we also have everything to give.
Yeah.
And people are desperate and hungry for righteousness. And we know the Bible says those who are hunger and thirst after righteousness will be filled. And people that are chasing this unrighteousness, they're realizing it's never enough.
Yeah.
And we get to bring that to people. So I'm excited.
And to come back to my point here, when I referenced Acts 18, 9, 10, folks, like it's my go-to when I'm having doubt. Like if I have the facts in front of me, if I know I'm going to be speaking, if I know I'm going to be there, but I'm uncertain of the results. So Acts 18, 9, 10. One night the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent. For I am with you, and no one is going to attack and harm you because I have many people in the city. If you stick to your facts, if you stick to the truth, if you do not go out of your way just to attack and beat people down, people listen.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be scared about what you're talking about. So that's my 2 cents for the end of the night.
That's a fact.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for being on, and we look forward to the conference, and we look forward to having you guys on again. So,
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
you
God
bet.
bless, guys.
God
Have a
bless
good
you.
night. God bless.
God
Bye.
So that was
we.
Naomi Bromke. That's how you say her
Yep.
last name.
Yep.
And Pastor Kurt Chaffee from New Song Church there in Bismarck. So that's going to be a pretty good deal
No, it'll be fun. It'll be
down
fun.
there.
I'm hoping that I can spend the entire day down at the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Low key, I may be in jeans and a t-shirt all day just because I want to
Yeah.
hang out. And that's the thing is like there's all sorts of ways you can help folks. There's all sorts of ways. If you don't have the courage to speak, have the courage to support. You know, have the courage to have conversations even with your own family members, because sometimes we don't agree with each other even in the same house.
Mm-hmm.
So like with the political season, like if you support a Democrat or you support a Republican, you support an independent, you support anybody, you shouldn't be able to be afraid to have a conversation, but don't turn it into a screaming match. You can scream at each other all day long, you're not going to accomplish anything. But if you can have a logical conversation, and if you can agree to disagree, both of you will walk away better. So, sorry, I'm just, it's going to be a long week, man. It's been a long week.
I hear you.
It's been a very reflective week for us in our house, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll continue to be so.
Yeah. You know, just on the whole separation of church and state and all that good stuff, man, the last couple of years it's been really eye-opening to me. And of course, we've had Steve Frisk up on here multiple times, and you know, I'm not going to say too much about this last Easter weekend, but it really kind of opened up my eyes to some things, and I'm going to be doing some studying like he encourages us to do for ourselves. And I'll comment later on the Easter weekend and what I feel on theirs after this last weekend and listening to him and his sermons here. And they're going to be having a get together down there for Passover on the 22nd of April. And I encourage you guys to go and listen to his sermons here the last month or so in preparation for Passover. And it's at Mule Shoe Fellowship. And they've got a website, muleshoefellowship.org, and then they've also got a YouTube channel as well. But you know, I've just thought this was been crazy for a long time is why we can't talk about this stuff anymore. It's like, oh, you can't talk about church or politics, right? We've been taught that since we've been real young, right?
Yep.
For the most part. And it's not that way. It shouldn't be that way. And that's, I think, where we've gotten away from a lot of things, because we can't even sit and talk about that stuff anymore. I mean, how many families have been ripped apart because of politics and church? I mean, and I still go back to the way I felt for a lot of my life in the Catholic Church and different things, and just always questioning things on why do we actually do that? Is that really how this is supposed to go? And one of the things that Steve has been talking about this last month or so is the difference between, and I kind of said it earlier tonight, is the difference between Christianity 300 years, well, the first 300 years, and then what it has been the last 2000 or so. I really encourage people just to go and do your own studying on it, and because a lot of it is teachings of man, and honestly, I think we need to actually get back to opening up our Bibles and actually reading what it says and go from there, and not take the word of the pastor, however you want to say that, and actually open up your Bible and do the studying yourself.
Well, and here's the thing, Shiloh. Here's the thing that I'll say about this. Just because somebody puts a quote in front of you from the Bible. I mean, you look at what
Yeah.
Luke 3:16 gets used all the time. You look
Yeah.
at the different, so many people will hunt and peck for just the verse that they need for a situation, that they don't take what
Right.
leads into it and leads away from it as an entire conversation.
Yeah.
And you can use that same analogy for anything in life, whether it's interpreting a section of century code, whether it's interpreting a piece of the Constitution. Well, the forefathers didn't intend for us to have automatic rifles. Keeping bear arms to form a well-regulated militia. I mean, like, that stuff's there for a purpose, folks. Because if eventually we get somebody in office that completely loses their shit, pardon the lack of better term, but we get somebody that completely loses it, and we end up under a true totalitarian government, it is our rights to protect our homes, to protect our neighbors, to protect our families. And our founders saw that and they put it there. So, interpretation, I mean, the devil is in the details. And so many times the devil will only give you half the truth that you need. It won't give you everything.
Right.
I mean, that saying has a name for a reason.
Our flesh takes over, and that's where the devil is.
Yeah.
So, no, and I'm glad that they're doing this conference, and we're gonna get to see. Here's the thing, I guess that has weighed on me for a long time too, is because especially now in the political season that we're in, Marvin. How many times have we heard, "Oh, he's a good Christian man," or she's a good Christian woman, she's gonna do great, and then, I mean, it turns out once they get there and for whatever reasons, I mean, lobbyists or money or whatever the case may be, it's just like it doesn't end up the way it's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
So why am I saying that? The reason I'm bringing that up is because, again, you know, we're supposed to do the work. God might have a plan, but he wants us to do the work. If we're not going to do the work, if we're not going to be spirit led, I don't care how many Hail Marys you say, you're not going to end up where you think you're going to end up.
Yeah. Oh, well, Shiloh, sorry to disappoint you about the state convention.
Yeah,
that would have been a lot of fun. I'm sure we've probably gotten kicked out, but that's okay.
Things will get better. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's been a rough year. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, most of people know the situation with my wife and her health, and we haven't gotten to do the things that maybe we thought we were going to be able to do and stuff. And so that's the way that it's going to be sometimes. And
well, at the end of the day, we're just along for the ride, right?
Yep.
I'm going to leave this parting image with you just because I saw it the other day. I chuckled. Is a picture of a Jesus standing in front of a wall, and on the wall was just as far as you could see, steering wheels.
Mhm.
And it was underneath. It said all these steering wheels Jesus has collected
Mhm.
from people saying, "Jesus, take the wheel."
Mhm.
it's it's funny because for me, like, I admit we're on whatever path set before us.
Mhm.
Like, as much as you want to try and fight the system, or how much you want to fight what you're intended to do, it seems like every time you fight what you're guided to do, it blows up in your face.
Mhm.
So, but I also don't believe in coincidence. So
Right.
there's that.
Right. No, and it all goes back to, again, I mean, what are we supposed to, what are we doing?
You
Know,
gotta show up.
right. The saying that, God has a plan, and I've read the end of the book and we win. It doesn't work that way. And
Still a
I've had
wild ride in the middle.
right. It doesn't work that way. You got to be willing to do the work.
Yep.
And I think the time is upon us now is we're gonna find out who's for real and who's not.
Yep.
I've been saying it for a long time. It's good versus evil, and it's getting to the point where you're gonna have to choose which side you're on.
All
So
right. Well, for those of you going to conventions, please don't pull any crazy shenanigans because I won't get to watch it. Oh,
so
boy. No
no,
Shiloh yelling from the second row.
I won't be there this time. So
All
yeah,
right.
that was quite.
Well,
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
you have fun with Whitney on Friday.
Yep.
I'll work on trying to get something aligned for us here this next week, Tuesday. I know we've been talking with Dr. Nadia again for her
Mhm.
inspiration. We've reached out to North Dakota Right to Life to come on to talk about their mobile
Yep.
ultrasound vehicles. So we'll have some different shows for a couple weeks. We're trying to get away from a little bit of the politics, and then we also have a group of youngsters that are down in Arizona that have been helping doing some canvassing stuff like that we're gonna do a Saturday show for. We just got to find a Saturday that works for everybody. So that'll be interesting to have them on and talk with them too, because I mean these kids are high school, college age, so it'll be
Yep.
a good talk. But you got to find inspiration everywhere.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. I encourage you guys to be the change that you want to see. And that's for darn sure. That's something that my job is even in the last year. So April it was or yesterday it was a year that I've been at the position that I'm in with the
Oh,
company that I'm in.
they gave that to you on April Fool's Day and you believed them.
That's what Angel said too. But anyway, I mean, we've been going through some culture changes, and the company's been growing and different things. And like I said earlier, some of these guys, they're rough, tough roughnecks, and it's been kind of hard to break through to them. But it's going good, and just being positive every day, and trying to be the change that I want to be in the company. I feel that it's starting to rub off. So it just
Oh,
it is what it is. I mean, we can all sit and complain all we want, right?
yeah.
We can, but we also need to do the work and be the change that we want to be.
Yep.
So anyway, all right, we will
All right.
see you guys Friday night. I'll have Whitney Ehrman on with funds for fuel cards, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. All right, good evening, folks.